Here we go with the next 3 chapters of Help! I'm a Prisoner in the Library. The body on the floor. Mary Rose had once had a dream that she and her mother and father and sister had moved to a strange city. In the dream, her mother drove her to a tall building and dropped her in front. "Hurry, Mary Rose," her mother said. "Hurry, hurry, hurry!" Mary Rose floated across the sidewalk. "Flying is faster than walking," she told another child who appeared out of nowhere and was flying toward the building too. When Mary Rose entered the building, she couldn't fly anymore. Someone had pointed at her and then pointed up to a stairway. Mary Rose climbed and climbed. Every time she came to a landing, someone pointed to more steps. The more steps she climbed, the more there were. She might have been climbing still if Jo Beth hadn't shaken her awake. "You're having a nightmare," Jo Beth had bellowed in her ear. It surprised Mary Rose that she hadn't become permanently deaf. Holding onto the banister and practically pushing Jo Beth ahead of her step by step, Mary Rose felt as if she had somehow drifted back into that nightmare. "Maybe I ought to wave my arms in the air and start flying," she thought to herself. There's a picture of the stairwell. Halfway up, there was a broad landing. Jo Beth stopped abruptly, so abruptly that Mary Rose ran into her and cracked her jaw on Jo Beth's head. "Don't ever do that again," Mary Rose said angrily. "I think you broke my jaw." "Something's standing over near the window." The way Jo Beth spoke, Mary Rose was ready for some new horror. Cautiously, she flashed the light toward the window. Then she sighed. "It's a wonder you didn't turn my hair white," she scolded. That's what Mrs. One Tree always said when she was upset. Mrs. One Tree had the same fine brown hair that her daughters had, but she was always sure it was going to turn white overnight. Now Mary Rose knew what her mother meant. It's just some kind of figure. What is it doing here, anyway? What kind of library is this? I'll tell you one thing, Mary Rose. I'm not going up any more steps. If we do, it will be to our certain death. Jo Beth liked the sound of that. She repeated it with joyful gloom. Certain death. Great. Just great. That's what I love about you, Jo Beth. You really know how to cheer a person up. She moved closer to the figure. Then she laughed. "Come and see what scared you. Come on." Jo Beth edged a little closer. "I know who that is. That's Pinocchio." "Pinocchio," Jo Beth finished. She giggled. "Look at the branch growing out of the end of his nose, and the bird sitting on the branch and singing." At the foot of the carved wooden figure, a small sign explained, "Whenever Pinocchio told a lie, his nose grew longer and longer." Jo Beth would have settled for staying on the landing, but Mary Rose was determined to complete the journey to the second floor. "Wait for me." Jo Beth got in front of her sister again, and she did so. The Myna bird flew past, screaming, "Yoo-hoo! Vilmore! Vilmore!" "Dumb, stupid bird," Jo Beth muttered. "Why can't you just be normal like other birds and sing?" Before long, the girls reached the head of the stairway and another wide landing, which turned around on both sides into 2 spacious hallways. In each hallway were a number of doors. At the farthest end on the right, a door was open. A light flickered from somewhere inside that room. "Come on," Mary Rose said. Jo Beth held back. "You go first. You're older than I am, and bigger, and you have the flashlight. You could use it as a weapon if you have to." Mary Rose looked down at the key ring and the tiny flashlight attached. She didn't bother answering. She just sighed and began to walk along the hallway. Jo Beth stayed where she was, clutching the railing at the top step. Mary Rose looked back. "Aren't you coming?" she demanded. Jo Beth shook her head. "What are you afraid of?" Mary Rose snapped. "I've got this great big weapon, remember?" The truth was, Mary Rose didn't want to explore by herself. Jo Beth wasn't much help, but she was a warm, living, human body. She waited while Jo Beth inched her way slowly to her side. Standing as close to one another as they could, they advanced steadily toward the room with the light. Mary Rose peered in through the open doorway. She saw a large room, comfortably furnished, with a fire glowing in a large fireplace. That was where the flickering light they had seen. Not too far from the fireplace was a huge bird cage. The mynah bird was already inside, sitting on a long wooden perch, preening its feathers. The two girls walked into the room, looking about curiously. "Somebody lives here," Jo Beth said finally. "I didn't know anybody ever lived in a library." "That's what we must have heard, Jo Beth. We must have heard the librarian. She must have knocked something over." Mary Rose's eyes began to shine with excitement. "Do you know what that means?" "We can get something to eat." Jo Beth felt relaxed enough now to remember that she was starved. "It means we can get out." Mary Rose felt wonderful. "If the librarian lives here, she can let us out. We're not locked in anymore." "Well, where is she? I still don't see anybody." "There's another door over there in the back of the room. I'll bet she's in there. Let's go see." Jo Beth didn't mind. She felt braver now because there was nothing strange about this room. It was like their living room at home, only bigger, and this one had a fireplace. The fire crackled. Small tongues of flame leapt upward. A large china cat was stretched out on the hearth. Ivy spilled from an iron kettle on the shelf above the fireplace, and books were scattered on the shelf as well, some held in place by bookends, some just lying in small piles. An easy chair was pulled up near the fireplace. On a table beside the chair was a beautiful silver candlestick with carved figures in the base. It held the most unusual candle, shaped like a woman with long flowing hair. She held a tiny lamb. "Look at that!" Jo Beth wanted to go over and run her fingers up and down the candlestick and candle, but Mary Rose was anxious to find the librarian. She motioned toward the door with her head. Once again Jo Beth went first, and Mary Rose trailing her. They had just walked to the far side of the long sofa, which was turned so that it faced the fireplace, when Jo Beth came to a quick halt. Mary Rose cracked her jaw again. "You're doing that on purpose," Mary Rose began, but she stopped talking when she saw what Jo Beth was staring at. There was a body on the floor. A woman. Is she dead?" Jo Beth's voice trembled. "She looks dead." "I guess we found the librarian." Mary Rose sounded calm, but she had a funny, twisty feeling inside. She wished now that she had stayed downstairs. A dead body was a whole lot worse than even the dolls in the kid hack. The two girls knelt down to take a closer look. With the fire behind them, their faces were shadowed and almost invisible under the peaks of the bonnets they were wearing. It was at that moment that Vilmore Fenton opened her eyes. She saw two small figures dressed exactly like the dolls in the hack, bending over her in absolute unmoving silence. "Oh, dear heaven!" she gasped. "They've come to life!" And she promptly fainted. Next chapter, We Weren't Dead. "What does she mean, we've come to life?" Jo Beth demanded. "We weren't dead." "Oh, it must be the clothes. I guess it was a shock waking up and seeing us dressed like this. After not expecting to see anybody in the house at all," Mary Rose explained. "I bet she tripped over this little iron cat. See? It's over on its side." "Like the one near the fireplace?" "Just got excited when the lights went out," Mary Rose went on, trying to figure out what had happened, "and forgot this little statue was here. That's when she fell and hurt herself, and that was the bump and the moaning we heard." Mary Rose concluded triumphantly. "And then she fainted. I wonder if she hit her head." "Well, what do we do now?" Mary Rose was already doing it. Her searching fingers moved gently. "She did hit her head, Jo Beth. She got a big lump back here." "Her right hand looks funny too," Jo Beth reported. "It's all swollen." She repeated her question. "What do we do now?" "Do you remember when Daddy fell down the steps and twisted his ankle? He was knocked out too." Jo Beth nodded. Of course she remembered. Their mother had covered her father with a blanket and had warned them not to try to move him, in case he hurt his back. Never move an unconscious person, their mother had told them, and she had put an ice pack on his leg to keep the swelling down. See if there's a bathroom or a kitchen through that door, Mary Rose instructed. Not me, JoBeth said promptly. I'm not going into an old dark room. Not me. There's plenty of light from the fire. Sure, in here. Why don't you go? JoBeth asked. You'd think they were at home the way Mary Rose was ordering her to do this and that. While she was thinking, JoBeth looked around the room. Finally, her eyes rested on the silver candlestick. Of course! It was just the thing. She ran over to the candle and picked it up. We can light this, Mary Rose, she said eagerly. It's such a big candle, it'll burn for a long time. Are you crazy? Mary Rose gasped. You're not supposed to light that kind of candle. That's just for show, like the one Grandma Jenny has on the dining room table. Now I'm going to go see what's in there. You can stay here till I get back. At that moment, Vilmore Fenton groaned. I'm coming with you, JoBeth said hastily. Together, the girls started to explore the room beyond the door. It's a kitchen, JoBeth said, surprised. I didn't know they had kitchens in a library. Well, this isn't like a real library, Mary Rose decided. Start looking through those drawers, JoBeth. See if there are any candles and matches around. JoBeth thought it was kind of fun, poking through the cabinets. Hey, I found a candlestick. Wait a minute. Here's another one. And I found candles and matches, Mary Rose said. Lighting 2 candles, Mary Rose fitted them into the candlesticks carefully and then placed them on the table. Now what are you doing? JoBeth asked as her sister began searching through the cabinets again. I'm looking for plastic bags. Plastic bags? JoBeth repeated blankly. Plastic bags? What for? Mary Rose didn't answer. She had found what she was looking for and was already opening the small freezer door at the top of the refrigerator. She removed a tray of ice cubes. Some of the cubes fell on the floor when she began to pour them into the 2 bags. That librarian is sure going to love the way you're making a mess of her kitchen. Still, Mary Rose didn't reply. When the bags were fairly full, she tied them with 2 of the wire loops that were in the box with the bags. You've made an ice pack, JoBeth said. Sometimes you're real smart, Mary Rose. Well, I am 10, Mary Rose said kindly. Now let's go back in and put 1 bag under her head and 1 on her arm. You bring the candlesticks. Mary Rose went out of the kitchen quickly with JoBeth following, holding the candlesticks with her arms outstretched. Mary Rose lifted Vilmore Fenton's head gently and put the bag at the base of her neck. Then she placed the librarian's arm on the second ice pack. Come on, she told her sister, taking one of the candlesticks. Where are we going now? We have to find something to cover her with, Mary Rose explained. She has to be kept warm. I wish she'd move. JoBeth looked down at the silent form on the floor. It's so creepy. I know she isn't exactly dead, but she isn't exactly alive either. Make sure you hold the candle way out in front of you so your clothes don't catch on fire. The 2 girls walked across the room and back into the hallway. The bird, who had fallen asleep, now woke up and called after them in an anxious voice. Say how do you do? How do you do? How do you do? JoBeth repeated rapidly. Who are we supposed to say how do you do to? She opened a door and held the candlestick high. I found the bathroom. Never mind the bathroom. Here's her bedroom. Help me pull the spread off the bed, JoBeth. We better take the blankets, too. The girls went back along the hallway, dragging their treasures behind them. Watch her arm. Watch her head, Mary Rose directed as the 2 girls wrapped Miss Fenton's body, piling the blankets and the heavy bedspread on top of her, carefully tucking them in at her sides. There, she said, satisfied at last. That will keep her good and warm. Is it almost morning? I'm getting awfully tired. Mary Rose looked at her watch and couldn't believe what she saw. She shook the watch, then held it up against her ear. Has your watch stopped? No, it's still going, but it says 7 o'clock. That can't be right. Is it 7 o'clock tomorrow morning already, or is it 7 o'clock tonight? In a place as strange as this, JoBeth wouldn't be surprised if time ran on a different schedule. We've only been here 2 hours. You mean we've still got another whole long night before morning? JoBeth wanted to cry. Not another whole long night. It's not another one. It's the same one. She had a sudden thought. You know what, JoBeth? Let's go see what's in the refrigerator. JoBeth was cheerful as soon as she took the first bite of chicken. This is real good. You think she'll be mad? Us eating up her food? With the power off, the food will spoil anyway, Mary Rose said practically. It would be a shame to have to throw away good food. So she helped herself to a generous portion of potato salad. In the other room, meanwhile, Vilmore Fenton's eyes were now open. She had come swimming up out of her inner darkness, telling herself she had had a nightmare. Why else would she feel that she was freezing and burning at the same time? Someone had put piles of stones on her body, she had thought before she opened her eyes. Heavy stones, because she could not move. Now, fully awake, she realized that she was weighted down with blankets and her bedspread. She sat up, shakily, pushing the covers off with her good right hand. She reached around and touched the bump on the back of her head. The pain made her take her hand away quickly. Looking down at the floor, she saw the bag of ice cubes on which her arm had rested. Ice packs! No wonder her head and arm were numb with cold. Vilmore! Yoo-hoo! Vilmore! The bird greeted her. What's your name, child? Oh, go to sleep, Miss Fenton said in a cross voice. The sound of her voice brought the girls from the kitchen quickly. When Miss Fenton turned around, ever so slowly, so that her head wouldn't fall off, Mary Rose and JoBeth were standing in the doorway, clutching half-eaten chicken legs and staring at her with wide, interested eyes. The last chapter for this section will be Now's the Time to Chase the Squirrel. No one is allowed on this floor, Miss Fenton said sharply. What are you doing here? She took a deep breath and her nostrils flared. When she did this, Miss Fenton was really angry. How dare you dress up in those clothes? And you're eating! You're eating in those clothes! Who let you girls in? JoBeth moved behind Mary Rose. There were so many questions. Which one were they supposed to answer first? She's not very nice, JoBeth whispered to her sister. I don't like her. This is not a popularity contest, Miss Fenton snapped. It isn't necessary for you to like me. JoBeth's whisper had been loud enough to be heard. Miss Fenton felt very irritated. Her head ached. Her arm hurt. These two children had appeared out of thin air. Worse, they had touched one of the displays, and now the younger one was standing there, eating Miss Fenton's food and saying that she didn't like her. We saved your life, Mary Rose said, putting her arm around JoBeth and giving Miss Fenton a defiant look. Mary Rose was scared. She didn't know what the librarian was going to do next. You saved my... Oh, the blankets and the ice packs. I suppose you were responsible for that? She told Mary Rose. JoBeth helped. All right, you girls come and sit down and tell me what you are doing here. Then we will go downstairs and you will take those dresses off and put on your own clothes. Miss Fenton settled comfortably on the sofa. She was beginning to feel a little better. The pain in the back of her head was not so strong, although the bump was still tender to the touch. And there was only a dull ache in her sprained wrist. In a moment, she would get the elastic bandage from the bathroom cabinet and wrap it around her wrist. Right now, she wanted to know who the girls were and how they had found their way into a closed library. Mary Rose started, with JoBeth interrupting along the way to get the facts straight. Well, if that doesn't beat buttered parsnips, Vilmore Fenton declared with the girl when the girls had finished telling her stories about their adventures in the library up until the time they had found her on the floor. Jo Beth sent her sister an anxious glance. What a strange thing to say. What was a parsnip anyway? It sounded like a little animal with short, sharp claws and tiny, beady eyes. But why, Jo Beth wondered, would anyone want to butter it? Earlier, when Jo Beth had explained about the emergency that had brought them to the library, Miss Fenton had exclaimed, "That must have been your father at the door, and I gave him hail and farewell so fast the poor man left before he got here." Jo Beth had tried to interrupt, to add that her father was last-minute Harry, but Mary Rose had just rushed on with the story. She had reached the part where they had dressed up in the clothing they found in the kid hack room and had sat on a bench with the dolls behind them. She just kept on talking, and Jo Beth couldn't get a word in edgewise. But now Mary Rose had finished at last. "Why couldn't you hear us talking and walking around downstairs?" Mary Rose now asked. She toasted a marshmallow in the fire, waiting until it was crisp and golden before popping it into her mouth. She and Jo Beth had been eating steadily since they had discovered the kitchen. "I was upstairs." "You mean there's another floor over this one?" Jo Beth's eyes opened wide. "This house must be bigger than a castle." "It's a mansion," Mary Rose corrected her sister. "That's what they used to call all the big old houses. Mansions." "How can this be a mansion and a library?" Jo Beth snatched the last marshmallow from the box. That made it even, 5 for Mary Rose and 5 for herself. Miss Fenton had turned them down. "They don't sit well in my stomach," Miss Fenton had announced. Jo Beth had closed her eyes and tried to imagine a row of toasted marshmallows with stick-like legs and arms sitting on Miss Fenton's stomach, slipping and sliding because they couldn't sit well. She had opened her eyes in a hurry, though, when she thought Mary Rose was trying to sneak the last marshmallow. There were no library branches in this whole neighborhood, and certainly nothing that was special just for children. And here was I, all alone with rooms to spare. I made the offer to turn the first floor over to the library, and before you could say coffee grows in a white oak tree, they agreed. And we've both been here a long time. Miss Fenton stared at the fire. But now they've built a fine modern library, and they won't be using this house anymore. After a moment, she added, her eyes snapping, "They say we have to move with the times." "Who are they?" Jo Beth asked. Mary Rose, studying Miss Fenton's angry face, changed the subject quickly. Do you think the blizzard is almost over? Do you think the power will come back on soon?" "Blizzard? What blizzard?" Miss Fenton couldn't believe all the things she was hearing. How long had she been lying on that floor? "Well, that's what the operator said on the phone. It's dead," Mary Rose told Miss Fenton, who had automatically started to reach for the telephone near the sofa. "I have a small radio in the kitchen that works on batteries. I'll get it and see if we can find out the latest news about the weather." "You'd better let me go," Mary Rose began, but Miss Fenton was already on her feet. "I'm not the queen, and I'll do it for myself, thank you very much." She went marching off to the kitchen. Over her shoulder, she instructed Mary Rose to get the elastic bandage from the bathroom cabinet. Jo Beth edged closer to her sister. "I'll go with you. I don't want to stay here with her by myself. She says the weirdest things. I don't know what she means half the time she's talking." "A lot of grown-ups talk funny, Jo Beth. Come on if you're coming." When the two girls came back with the bandage, Miss Fenton was already sitting on the sofa again. Mary Rose helped Miss Fenton with the bandage, wind the bandage around her swollen wrist, and Jo Beth turned the radio on. A voice came leaping out at them. The reporter was so excited, all of his sentences sounded as if they ended in exclamation marks. "The worst storm in our history. It's still snowing heavily. Power is out in many parts of the city. Travelers have been forced to find shelter in schools and other public buildings. Cars have been abandoned in the streets. Already, many cars have been completely covered by the drifting snow. I warned Daddy the snow would cover the car and we would freeze to death, JoBeth announced. I told him that would happen. Well, you didn't freeze to death, so don't be so dramatic, JoBeth. We're probably warmer than Daddy is right now. Miss Fenton held up a finger for silence. She wanted to hear what else the reporter had to say. Accidents. People are urged not to go out unless it is absolutely necessary. Already there have been many reports of serious problems. A house burning on the far east side of town and fire engines unable to reach the flaming structure. And the father of 2 small girls who mysteriously disappeared from their car parked on the near north side early this evening now fears foul play. Foul play? That's us! JoBeth was excited. I wonder if they're showing our pictures on TV. I hope they didn't show my school picture. Foul play, Miss Fenton repeated in a hollow voice. Oh, that poor, poor man. I shall never forgive myself for turning him away. Never. That's silly, Mary Rose said sensibly. You didn't know. Why, the last thing Daddy said to us was to keep the doors locked and not to talk to any strangers. Anyway, we're perfectly all right. But Daddy doesn't know that. Another thought struck JoBeth. I wonder if Mommy knows. Maybe she doesn't even care now that she's having this new baby and all, she added. Oh, don't pay any attention to JoBeth. Everything's like a play on the stage to her. Turn the radio off, Miss Fenton instructed, and try the phones again. Maybe they've repaired the lines. Mary Rose obligingly lifted the receiver of the phone. It's still out of order. JoBeth was thinking again about having her picture shown on TV. I wish they could show us in these clothes. Wouldn't Daddy be surprised? Miss Fenton sat up straight. Weevily wheat! She had almost forgotten. She struggled to her feet. You girls bring the candles. Where are we going? Mary Rose asked. Downstairs, to the kid hack display. You are going to remove those dresses and put on your own things right now. I hate it down there. It's dark and scary, JoBeth protested. Can't we change when it gets light again? Mary Rose didn't want to go downstairs either. Why leave this cozy room with its crackling fire and cheerful, pleasant warmth? Now's the time to chase the squirrel, Miss Fenton insisted. There's nothing to be afraid of. Come along. There was no arguing with Miss Fenton. Even the bird, taking interest in the movements, flew down after them. JoBeth tried not to look at the shadows they were casting on the wall as they went down the steps, but her eyes were drawn to them again and again. The strange figures on the wall bobbed up and down. They stretched high and long, then vanished at the stair landing, only to bob up again below. Since the girls were wearing long, old-fashioned dresses, their shadows seemed to rise up from the base of the floor as if they were growing right out of the wood. She was almost glad to reach the kid hack room. Silently, the 2 girls undressed and began to put on their own clothes. Suddenly, JoBeth, who had glanced toward the large center room, caught her breath. What's the matter now? Mary Rose demanded. JoBeth shook her head and pointing a shaking finger. There, in the large room, papers were swirling up from Miss Fenton's desk, moving in circles, a dipping, gliding, silent dance in the air. Join us tomorrow to find out what happens. See you soon.